two, three. This time of day, everything's okay. I take a long look around, I have to say.
Hello, I'm Willy Jones, host of Your Friends and Neighbors, and I'm very happy to come into your homes again, whether you're watching us in your bed at night or early in the morning with your cup of coffee, or maybe at lunchtime. You know, it is on at different times of the day. You can check in the banner on Saturdays for Channel 15. For Your Friends and Neighbors. We're right there. We have a brand new show starting today. Of course, I'm talking about something that will be ending in 2 weeks because we are taping this on March 14th. So, but there's a new show that has just started today with Matt Perry, and I hope people are going to be catching that. My guest today, I have been wanting to get her here. We have spoken at WBTN quite a few years ago, and she is this fiery Italian redhead, and she just lives, I believe. I think it's in her blood. She just loves music, and I have loved her sharing her music on WBTN with the Bennington community and surrounding communities. And we have a few things that we kind of like. We like Michael Feinstein. We like Stephen Sondheim. But today, we're going to be talking about a special show that is coming up April 10th at Oldcastle Theater. L'Ensemble, our director, our guest today is the director of the artistic director, I should say, of L'Ensemble, and we're going to talk about that show and many other things too. So good morning to Ida Faiella.
And to you, thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here finally, and I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, we're taping on kind of a miserable
It's
day.
miserable outside, so it's a good day to be indoors.
Right. The show probably won't be on for a couple of weeks, so we'll make sure we get it on before the April 10th show. But before we talk about that, and actually, as I said, we're taping on the 14th. Yesterday, the 13th, I went to a wonderful concert at Oldcastle that was included Ida and 5 wonderful musicians. But let's find out a little bit about Ida first.
Okay.
You know, just a little thumbnail sketch of who you are and your beginnings.
Oh, well, I grew up, well, actually I was born in Portchester, New York, and then I grew up in Connecticut. And from the very, very early on, I sang. My mother claimed that I sang before I spoke,
Yeah.
and which is interesting to me. And my mother had a very beautiful voice, and my sister had a voice, my brother had a voice. They didn't choose to go on professionally with singing, but they both could have if they had chosen to do so. And we had, just kind of a lot of encouragement for music. And then in the schools that I went to, there was a lot of encouragement. And very early on, like in grammar school, I was already in dance classes. And that was very good for a singer. That was very good in terms of posture. Well, in posture, because as a singer, your body is your instrument. And so ballet class was terrific for that.
I'm sure.
And stayed with me. And then for a while, when I was in high school, in return for my receiving classes, I would teach. And that was very good. And then I went to, actually, I was part of a competition in Connecticut called the Jenny Lind competition. Jenny Lind was a Swedish soprano. You know probably who she was.
Her character is in the musical Barnum.
Yes.
Right?
And it was P.T. Barnum who brought her to the United States.
Right.
And evidently to Connecticut. And so they have a competition there. They still have it, called the Jenny Lind competition.
Was she the Swedish Nightingale?
Swedish
Is that what they
Nightingale,
call her?
right,
Okay.
right. And, so that was terrific, and I won that competition, which gave me a full tuition scholarship to Hart School of Music in Hartford, Connecticut. and got my bachelor's there, and I got a lot of great stage training there. You know, I think in my teaching, I've always said, whether you want to be an opera singer or a concert singer, you still have to know how to have a stage presence. And I always say this to students, two things. Being a performer is very akin to being an athlete. You have to keep your instrument in shape, which in our case is our body, and you have to know that when you're out there, it's just you. You know, it's just one of my faves was Mariano Rivera, the closer pitcher for the Yankees.
Okay.
And I would watch him. He would go out there, and he had a focus that was just so unbelievable. And I think we need to have that. So anyway, so those early years and that early training kind of gave me that. And then when I left Connecticut, I went to New York City, because that's what everybody had to do.
Of course.
And I was lucky. I always had teaching jobs, which kept me involved with music, whereas many of my friends would get to New York, okay, how am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to pay for my lessons? And they would work retail, or they would work in offices, and then by the time they got home at night, they were too tired to practice.
Right.
So I was very lucky that I've always taught, and so I was involved with music all day long, and therefore I was singing even when I was teaching. So that was very good for me, and I've had lots of really wonderful students. And we were just talking recently about Facebook. I love it because I hear from people I taught 20, 25 years ago, and people I taught 5 years ago, and it's really nice.
I hear from some of my
I
third
like
grade
that.
students.
Isn't it wonderful?
You know, on Facebook yesterday, I don't think, I think this is new news, I think. Somebody was congratulating Katie Beck for her invite to the Met.
I don't know. Maybe
To
she's
some
in the
program?
Met. There's a wonderful program, the Lindemann Young Artist Program.
Well, you'll have to look.
If
I know,
she's
'cause
in
I
that,
know-
that's terrific.
I know you were
Yeah,
you were a big mentor
And I
for
hear from
Katie.
her every so often.
Yeah.
If she got invited into that, that is a big, big deal.
Yeah, well,
because that's run by James Levine, who's the music director of the Met.
Okay, well, I think it was I think it was yesterday on Facebook.
Oh, I'll go check.
Yeah, you'll have to go and check on
Oh,
that.
and
Sorry,
he's talking about
but
Katie
you
Beck,
said, you know,
who's
talking
from
to students
Bennington,
and teaching,
and
right?
and she went to Mount Anthony, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then she went to Crane up in Potsdam, and then she went out to, I think, L.A.,
Yeah, she's still out there.
where she is now, yeah. Oh, that would be fabulous
Well,
for her.
I think I
Well,
think
we're saying it on television now, so it's got to
so
be
it's got to be true. Got to be true. So yeah, what brought you up to Vermont? Evidently, you spent a lot of your time in New York City.
did, yeah.
So what
And
brought
then
you
I started
our way?
going back and forth between New York City and Cambridge, New York. And we were living in Cambridge, and you know, we had leased this wonderful old farmhouse and barn. And so whenever I see a barn, my mind says you have to do concerts in it. And so we did. We renovated the barn. And barns have great acoustics. Anybody who works in a barn can tell you that.
I'm sure.
And so we did concerts there for years.
And Ida said her husband, Barry Finclair, who passed away much too early, was a world-renowned violinist, and the two of them together were wonderful. So
yeah, we had a lot of fun. And it's interesting when people connect in the same profession. It's very interesting. And I often wonder, I mean, because that's what I did, and I mean, which doesn't mean I think that's right, but very often I wonder how people who are in very different professions, how they're able to get along intimately, you know, because when you're in the same field and you think about that all day and you talk about that each evening, it's very, very compelling.
doesn't seem to always work in Hollywood, though.
Well, that's
I think
a whole
there's too
different
much
world.
ego there.
Right.
A little too much
But
ego.
then after, when we were in Cambridge, then I got invited to teach at Bennington College. And then that's when I came over this way and live in Shaftesbury.
And this group, L'Ensemble, this started over in Cambridge, right?
No, actually it started in New York City.
Oh, you started in New York. And
Yeah,
then
and it always, everything I've done always started somehow with teaching. I was teaching a private girls' school in Manhattan, 5th Avenue and 91st Street. And I remember they were not the least bit interested in classical music. So I said, look, I'm going to make a deal with you. They would see, a lot of my friends would come by who were in the New York Philharmonic or in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, and these young high school girls, you know, in a girls' school in Manhattan, and they'd ask, who's that, who's that? And so I said, I'll make a deal. We'll do a class, say, on the Renaissance. And then at the end of a certain period of time, I will bring my friend, if you all do well on the exam, I will bring in all these friends of mine to play a concert of that period of music. Okay. So we did that for a couple of years, and then other other private schools started sending their students over to my class, which got much too big. So I finally said, well, look, let's make this a public concert series. And that's how I started L'Ensemble.
Oh, okay.
And that was, you know, was a lot of fun. And of course, we've done things, I mean, we've toured a great deal. We've done residencies at University of Maine, University of Minnesota, Haverford College, Emory College, Eastern Mennonite College, all over.
And now Oldcastle Theater.
And Oldcastle Theater. This is our third year there.
Right.
And it's a good fit for us. It's the right size for chamber music, because the thing about chamber music that I believe very, very deeply is that the audience should be able to see what's going on and to watch the interaction amongst, because chamber music, you have 5, 7, at the most, maybe 8 people. And so those 8 people have to be in communication with one another, nonverbal communication, rather intensely.
Right, because you don't have that conductor there with a baton.
That's right.
Right.
And we like it that way.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody constantly telling me what to do, how to do it.
Right.
You know.
Right.
That's why I started this group.
That's right. Hey, have you been watching Mozart in the Jungle?
Oh, yes. And I met the woman who wrote it. And
Are you okay with it?
Yeah, I am. I think it's wonderful. But I was afraid, at first, I was afraid that my husband might be in it, you know. And I said, oh my God, what if she reveals? But fortunately, he was not, because they had worked together a great deal. I think it's very interesting. I have the book.
I haven't read the book.
Well, if you want, I'll lend it to you. It's interesting because a lot of it is, you know, some of it in the film version is a little bit exaggerated, maybe.
Yeah.
But the book is very right on.
You have to catch this on Amazon, Hulu.
And I think it's, oh, well, maybe I'm wrong.
It's either Hulu or
but it's called
Netflix.
Mozart in the Jungle.
And they have been picked up for a 3rd season.
Yeah, and it's all about the freelance world in music, people who play Broadway shows, people who play, you know, subbing all over, a lot of people who do studio work, you know, play background for various artists who come in to record.
With a little soap elements added to it.
Yeah,
Little intrigue.
right.
Little sex. Comedy. Gael Garcia Bernal. Anything he does is okay with me. I think he was perfect for this show. Yeah. Well, you know, the show was getting no attention until at the Golden Globes it got best series and Gael Garcia Bernal.
And I was surprised about that too. Because I was surprised it wasn't getting attention. I mean, they have Bernadette Peters in it, you know, and
Christian Borle was in it for a bit too. I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But maybe now they'll get more attention.
I hope so.
It's interesting.
I ramble. I'm sorry.
Why?
But I just happen to think, oh God, if you're not watching Mozart, I know you would love it. So at some point though, you became attached to Cambridge, right?
Yeah,
because didn't Eric Peterson's wife Deborah?
That's right.
She was with you guys.
Involved with us. Yeah.
Okay.
And I know how that went. I was working at Wesleyan University, doing another one of these residencies, which I love to do. They're actually they're more intense than teaching somewhere full time.
Right.
And in some ways, to me at any rate, they're more interesting because you're not going to faculty meetings. You're not doing, you know, you're just working intensely with students on the things that you have studied your whole life.
Right.
What's better than that? That's pretty exciting. And at Wesleyan, there was a woman that I met there, a stage director, who was originally from Cambridge, New York. And I did an opera with her, and then she invited me up to her parents. Oh, and she said to me, do you like the country? And I lied. And I said, oh, I love going to the country, which was a total lie. I admit to it all these years later. And I remember us going up there for Thanksgiving with her family and getting involved with folks when they were first putting together Hubbard Hall.
Okay.
And helping to raise money. I brought the folks down to New York State Council on the Arts to get them involved with funding there. And then And then my daughter was about 5, and I thought, maybe I should take her out of the city. And so we moved to Cambridge. I mean, we kept a place in New York for when we were working there, but spent 16 years in Cambridge and in that wonderful barn that we had, where we did everything. We did cabarets, we did operas, we did chamber music in a barn, which I loved.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know we could spend a lot of time talking about so many things, but I think what we really need to concentrate on today is this concert yesterday, but especially the concert that's coming up on April 10th at Oldcastle. It'll be at 3 o'clock again?
In the
3
afternoon,
o'clock
right.
in the afternoon. Yesterday, the title was A French Bouquet. It was all French composers. Ida did this poem. I'm telling you, it's a good thing that
beautiful.
I read that
Yeah.
poem that was translated first, because I wouldn't know whether you were having an orgasm or you were dying, or I wouldn't have known what was
But you
happening.
knew it was
because
something emotional, yeah.
ooh, it was emotional. That's
And the
for
poem
sure.
was quite wonderful. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece about a woman who's abandoned by her lover. And the way that Chausson was the guy who wrote the music, the way he was able to convey the poem and the emotions from that poem and convey them into music is just incredible. And I think that even if you don't understand the language, I mean, you get what's going on. You get the deep emotion of this woman who's been abandoned, and she then decides at the end of the piece to abandon herself to the ocean.
Right.
And it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. But
now the next concert is total contrast.
the next one will be
Total
totally
contrast.
different. We were talking before we started taping here that I was very moved by a lot of the music yesterday. That first, I don't know, do you call it a piece? I don't know. Okay.
The first piece.
The first piece got so, I mean, I thought my heart was going to burst right out of my chest.
Great.
Holy moly.
I can't wait to tell the violinist. That you
Well,
said
I
that.
told you yesterday. Oh, he's wonderful.
Yeah, he's
and of course,
terrific.
I showed my idiocy by saying the viola, but first violin, the Dale Stuckenbrook.
Stuckenbrook. And I have to tell you a story about Dale Stuckenbrook. He was the concertmaster for the Broadway show The Producers years ago. Remember that show?
Oh, God.
Well, and he's got this incredibly German last name, Stuckenbrook, right?
yeah.
So they were first, and he was born in Germany, but he came here as a young child. And in the early days of The Producers, they were doing previews, and one of the actors wasn't totally up to par with his lines, and there were several lines in German in the show.
Oh, right.
Right, and so this one actor, I mean, he just encounters brain fog, and the German words don't come to him, and he just yells out, Stuckenbrook, Stuckenbrook, and there's Dale sitting in the orchestra, who's a very modest guy, and is hearing his name shouted from the
that's
stage.
funny.
It's
That's
a
funny.
story that nobody's forgotten on Broadway. I'm surprised it didn't make the Mozart in the Jungle
I know.
book.
Well, you never. Although
Yeah,
I
you
guess
never
they're going
know.
to travel abroad in the third season. I guess. That's
yeah.
what I'm hearing, anyways. But yeah, no. I said
He's
to
a
Ida,
wonderful violinist.
besides your wonderful moment in the show, he to me yesterday stole the show. I mean,
Oh, nice. I
just
can't wait to tell
watching
him.
and he sits on the edge of his seat, which
yeah.
makes me a little bit nervous because everybody else was sitting back and playing or whatever, but he gets into it. And then my friend Ellen Varick, I took to the show with me yesterday, and she wanted to sit on the left because she wanted to
See the
see
keyboard,
the
sure.
pianist's hands on the keyboard.
I understand,
And
yeah.
I said, okay, well, because I like usually in the center, but yeah, I went over, and it was great. Quite often you've brought Lincoln Mayorga with you, and Lincoln and this gentleman's name.
Charles Abramovic.
All right, thank you. He had such a different styling, and his fingers were I don't know. And I thought at one point the whatever almost came down when she went up to, I don't know, maybe not.
I don't know what happened, but I heard when I was backstage, and I heard sort of muttered to one another, and I never asked what happened, because something
I don't
like
know,
maybe
'cause I
she
think
hit
she
the
went-
lid, or maybe she.
I don't know what. I think she went to, and then but it was fine. It didn't. It never went down.
Oh.
But it's like it started to go
Oh,
down.
that would be awful.
I know it.
Yeah,
I know
that
it. Now maybe
that
I
would be
thought, well,
pretty
maybe it
awful.
was just what I was seeing. But
And very often pianists will ask me to turn pages. I always refuse them because it's a huge responsibility.
It is, I know.
It's one thing if you mess up your own performance, but if you mess up somebody else's performance, that's too much to bear.
Yeah. So maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just the lights shining or something. But I thought,
excuse me.
I think that was a close
Oh,
one. Well, God
oh.
bless you.
Well, thank
God
you.
bless you. That will be, unfortunately for you, that will be in because we don't edit.
Great.
We
I can
don't
hardly
edit,
wait
so
to see this.
Maybe. Oh, you could do you could do Adelaide or Adelaide now.
Yeah, a
Oh, you-
person.
yeah, you could do that from Guys and Dolls.
Could develop a cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, just don't get all these colds. People have been having terrible colds. Yeah, no, it was a really interesting concert. Always wish at Oldcastle there was always more people filling the place up. But I believe everybody that was there yesterday was very appreciative and
Very
really enjoyed it.
attentive. That's what I was
And
aware
yeah,
of. Very
attentive.
attentive.
And no, I was really impressed. And I don't get out or at home or in my car listen to enough classical music. And I think I said to you yesterday, I don't know, I don't understand it or whatever, but I know it brings some kind of emotion to me. When these composers sit down and write their piece, do they have a story in mind, or is it just
very often,
Yeah.
often. But to respond, so very many people will say to me, "Well, I don't understand classical music," and I'm always saying, that's not it. You don't have to be focused on that. What the composer and what the performers want is that you should have an emotional response. And that's the primary thing. Now, there could be an intellectual resume after the fact. You may be thinking about the piece, and you may, like you obviously have been, you think about the poetry. How did the composer set that poem, and how did he come up with the setup for, say, a 3-movement piece that they did yesterday for solo piano? Or how do you write this piece for string quartet and piano? So, but that's afterwards, I think. I think in the moment, what the composer and we performers are looking for is that the listener should have an emotional response. And
Well, there was a
That's what
lot of
matters.
different, as I said, that first, actually the last piece too.
Oh, that's
There were some
wild.
moments in there that were,
Yeah, it's very
ooh,
wild,
ooh,
yeah.
But that first piece, man, I'm telling you. And it was so funny, when you're listening to the Ravel piece, every once in a while you could hear a little bolero. Couldn't
Yeah.
I hear a little bolero?
well, yeah,
Somebody's
because it's a
phone ringing.
habanera.
Is that your
and
phone?
Yes,
Oh, dear. We got a phone ringing too. Oh, we didn't think about it.
Oh,
All right, well, we'll just let it ring.
But
They stopped.
the first piece on the program, and which was by Saint-Saëns,
Yeah.
and then the Ravel that you're speaking about
Right.
now, they were both based on the habanera, because at that time in France, people were obsessed with the Spanish dance. And so that's why I programmed them that they were 2 different versions
Okay.
of a habanera. The first one being longer and very virtuosic, and the second one, the one for cello, was actually written for the voice, was written for the bass voice,
Okay.
and then was transcribed for everybody wanted to play it. So it's arranged for cello, for violin,
right.
for everything you can think of.
Now, cello. Now, usually I'll see when somebody's playing the cello, they have a little piece that they put down and they stick.
Yeah.
That gentleman didn't.
Yeah, well, he has good control of his instrument.
I was going to say.
Yeah. I don't know that from personal information.
We all need good control of our instrument at times. Yes, we do. All right. Well, we got to spend time on the show that's coming up on April 10th because we should have this on for 2 weeks before that. It's called Pick Yourself Up. Now, it's the music of Dorothy Fields.
Well, lyrics. of
Lyrics.
Dorothy Fields, yeah.
I should say lyrics and Sheldon Harnick.
Harnick.
Now, Sheldon Harnick, Fiorello, which I don't know that well, but I certainly know
Fiddler on the
Standing
Roof.
on the Corner.
Right.
And Fiddler on the Roof.
She Loves
Me. My wife adored She Loves Me.
Really? We're going to do, I think, 4 songs from it.
Oh,
It's a
cream?
wonderful show.
You
We're
need-
doing Ice Cream.
Trip to the
Ice Cream
library?
is, no, not that one, but Ice Cream is about a blind date.
Oh.
And this woman sings about the blind date, and then she says, he brought me ice cream. You know, not
Yeah.
flowers, not
Right,
candy.
right.
Ice cream. Who
Right,
brings
right.
ice cream to a blind date? But it's so the way Sheldon Harnick, the lyricist, is, he throws these curves that you don't expect. And I really had the privilege of working with Sheldon. A few years ago, I did a concert with him. And Sheldon did the lyrics for Fiddler on the Roof, right? And so the concert was set up that I would stand up and go down stage and sing, and then come back and sit, and Sheldon would get up and he'd go down stage, and sometimes we'd sing a duet, whatever. But anyway, he sang If I Was a Rich Man. Now, Sheldon Harnick, we just told you, was the lyricist for Fiddler on the Roof,
Right.
the lyricist for so many Broadway
right,
shows.
right.
He's made a few bucks.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know, so he's singing If I Was a Rich Man. And as he came back and I got up to walk by him, I go, you got a hell of a nerve.
Yeah.
And I was told that he was sitting there with this smile on
Oh,
his
that's
face the whole
funny.
time. And he was, I mean, he's 91 years old.
I know it, and he's
And
still,
still
going.
working.
And you got a, I understand, a really nice
Oh,
note or
yeah.
email from him.
He knew that I was doing, no, he sent me a handwritten letter in the mail, which was very interesting. He knew that I was going to do this show of lyricists, Dorothy Fields and him. And so he wrote me a note, and he said to include this in the program, and it was what he thought about my work.
Right.
And it was very generous of him and very sweet, very touching.
Yeah.
So the program is built around these two lyricists. Now, they're both so interesting. Dorothy Fields was one of the few female lyricists working in the 30s and 40s. And not only that, but she was working in Harlem. She wrote several shows for what was called the Cotton Club.
Uh-huh.
And one was all about Harlem, and then there was another song called Hot Chocolate.
Okay.
And
Oh,
do you know that?
yeah, I know Hot Chocolate.
Really?
And somebody, I think they stuck that in one of these other shows.
Well,
too.
they may- yeah,
like
they might
Buckland
have.
Brunch, or, you know, something
Yeah.
like that. One other show
Well,
like that.
so it turns out that I meet this wonderful pianist by the name of David Lahm, terrific pianist, jazz kind of pianist, and he's Dorothy Fields' son. And so we've been going through all this music, some of which is unpublished, that he just has in his library at home. And he told me all these stories about growing up with her and
Oh, so
what was
you'll
it
have
like.
those to share with
Well,
them, a few
so it'll be
stories.
wonderful because he's very open about it. And I said, would it be okay with you if we allowed for a dialogue with the audience if they want to ask you questions about a certain lyric and what did your mother mean by that? I mean, Dorothy Fields is no longer with us, so we can't ask her, but we can ask David.
Right.
And then David became a professional musician himself. Obviously, he inherited some of his mother's talent. And it's pretty exciting. It's an exciting program of lyricists, you know, for people like you and me who love the word.
Yeah. Right,
This is
right,
perfect.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And what I am intrigued by is that she has written some of the most wonderful songs that have become standards.
Oh, yeah.
The way you are tonight.
Look Tonight, right, with
on
Jerome
the sunny
Kern.
side of the street.
Sunny side of the street.
I can't give you anything
Yeah.
but love.
I'm in the mood
I'm
for
in
love.
the mood
We're
for
gonna
love.
do those
and then
two.
from Sweet Charity, Big Spender, and
Yeah.
If You Could See Me Now, Exactly Like You, Pick Yourself Up, which is
What's
the title of the concert. I Won't Dance,
Don't Ask Me, yeah.
and A Fine Romance.
Yeah.
I mean, this
Don't
woman,
Blame Me. I mean, just wonderful, wonderful. And she worked, you know, she lived a nice, long, juicy life. And so she worked with a lot of different composers, from those early composers like Jimmy McHugh and through Sweet Charity and Cy Coleman. And, you know, that's it. And Jerome Kern, who was such a specialized kind of composer, to be able to have that skill, to be able to work with all those different composers like she did, that's pretty amazing.
And I read also 25 films.
Yeah,
She did
yeah.
lyrics. I don't know if she did all of the lyrics, but she did.
Certainly for the
No,
songs.
and I meant to go and check my DVD. Someplace I saw where she was involved with the movie Anna Get Your Gun.
Oh, I don't
Now,
know.
that's Irving
I
Berlin.
don't know. I
And-
think she did work with
But
Berlin.
it did say something. Her name was connected to Irving, to
yeah,
that
well,
show.
She
and
was
I was
connected
wondering,
with everyone.
I was wondering how that came to be.
She was evidently very highly thought of, that she was easy to work with. that she sometimes the composer would give her an idea, and so she'd write a lyric, and then the composer would set the music. Other times the composer would write a tune and then tell her to set the lyrics to it. That's really hard, you know, I mean, because lyrics have their own rhythm, and then you're presented with a piece that has an innate rhythm, and you've got to, that's not easy.
No.
So she evidently people enjoyed working with her, which is evidenced by all the composers that she worked with. The other thing I found interesting is and see, I wouldn't have known this if I didn't meet David Lahm, her son. She wrote a version of Porgy and Bess before the Gershwin Porgy and Bess. And we're going to do one of the songs called I Got You, Porgy. We're going to do one of the songs from the show. And there's several things that we're going to do that we're going to do, you know, like the I Can't Give You Anything But Love, I'm in the Mood for Love. We're going to do the two of them.
I mean,
but then there are songs that people won't know.
Right.
And that'll be kind of fun, I think, to introduce folks to them.
Well, and I think I was reading someplace too that Sheldon Harnick, there's a lot of lost treasures, songs that did not get into shows. He also did another show that I love that Oldcastle did, The Apple Tree.
Right.
Now, did he always work with Jerry Bach, or most of the time?
Most of the time. Most of the time. And the other thing that people don't know about Sheldon, and I only discovered because I did the concert with him, he was a composer as well. And there was a wonderful song that I sang that he wrote the music and the lyrics called The Shape of Things. And it's a wonderful lyric about, you know, the shape of our love and the shape of the vase that the flowers were in. And then he has an affair on the side. And then the last verse is about the shape of the coffin after she's laid him out. But he's incredibly talented, incredibly educated, diverse, talented.
Well, on the Facebook, they also have a clip of him, I guess it's from YouTube, of him singing, I think he's playing the guitar, singing the Merry Minuet or something like that.
I don't know that.
Well, I saw that on Facebook last night.
And the other
when I was
thing he
looking
did
around
is he translated some operas. Again, I only know because I did the concert with him, and we did a piece from The Merry Widow that he had translated for New York City Opera.
And Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Yeah.
He worked with Michel Legrand, was it?
Yeah.
In 1979, I think
I
said.
forgot about that.
A production, I guess it never, I would love to have seen.
I know.
The music in that show. And also, when I think of that, I think of The Young Girls of Roquefort, too.
I don't know that.
I guess
I don't know that show.
Oh, love that. Gene Kelly.
I was happy I met Michel Legrand in Birdland one night. And he was doing, the bass player who's coming up to do this concert, his name is David Fink. And David Fink has played a great deal with Michel Legrand. And so Michel was going to be doing an evening at Birdland and asked David to contract it. So David played, wonderful drummer. My husband played first violin. And so he had a string quartet and a rhythm section. And then at one of the performances I went to, because I enjoyed Michel Legrand. I think that's a superbly talented person. And Tony Bennett was in the audience. Now, this only was maybe at the most 10 years ago. So he was not a kid anyway, right?
No.
And so afterwards, and so in the middle of the show, Michel Legrand spots Tony Bennett in the audience because it's a small club. It's like the size of the Oldcastle Theater. So you can see the audience.
Right.
And he says, Antonio Di Benedetto, which is his real name.
Right.
And he says, come on up here and sing with us. And I swear to you, on the spur of the moment, he went up and he said, well, let's do, and I forget what the tune was, but just Tony Bennett and Michel Legrand and then bass and drums did this piece on the spur of the moment. And it was wonderful. Well, afterwards, at the break, I was introduced to him and we were talking, and I started talking to him in Italian. I went, Ma signore Di Benedetto, che grande piacere di fare la vostra conoscenza. And you know how people get that glazed look over their eyes? And that's what happened to him. And I said, you don't? He goes, I don't. I said, oh no. With a name like Antonio Di Benedetto.
I know.
He's also a very fine painter, you know.
I know.
Yeah.
I bet Lady Gaga didn't do that to him.
What?
Speak Italian
no,
to Tony Bennett.
But I talked about, no, I didn't have her as a student, but I talked about the school I taught at when I first went to New York. It was a private girls' school run by nuns. It was called the Convent of the Sacred Heart. For instance, I had Caroline Kennedy as a student at the convent, and Martha Mitchell. I mean, you know.
Oh, wow.
Lady Gaga went to the Convent of the Sacred Heart. The nuns must be rolling over in their
I'm
graves.
Sure they are.
Yeah.
What do you think of her?
Actually, I think
she
she's
has
very talented.
She is
She's
talented.
talented. She's gutsy.
Right.
And I say, good for. Sometimes she's crazy. I mean,
Right.
she went. I'll never forget. I wasn't a fan of the appearance that she made on David Letterman's show, where she showed up in a dress made of pork chops.
Oh yeah, that was.
Well, on so many levels, that was distasteful.
That was just yeah.
On so
Now,
many levels.
Let's go, we need to go back to Sheldon Harnick because we gave some time there to Dorothy Fields. What was it about the show, which I don't know that well, and I know Grace Mary knew it, Fiorello.
Fiorello.
Why did Fiorello, what was it about that show that it won the Pulitzer that year?
Well, I think it was such an amalgam of bringing the story out through the music, and it wasn't just a stop and go. Here we have some dialogue. Oh, and now I'm going to sing, which is not very satisfying artistically. I think Fiorello was sort of like through composed. That the songs didn't shock you when they started or when they stopped. It was a continuum. And I think that was part of its appeal.
And the theme. I mean, this is LaGuardia, right?
Right,
and
right.
It was all about
Fiorello,
I don't know,
LaGuardia.
because I know it's a Pulitzer Prize for drama, so I'm thinking that the book must have been really.
I don't remember
really
who did the
too,
book.
and
I
the
don't
lyrics.
remember.
No, I don't know either.
But Fiddler on the Roof. What an incredible show that
now,
is.
he takes this time to write you this beautiful note.
Oh yeah, it was so sweet.
And the man is 91 years old.
Yeah.
He's got 2 revivals
Right.
on Broadway right now.
And that's what he
She
said.
Loves Me and the Fiddler on the Roof, and he takes the time out
Right.
to do that.
And he said in his letter, he wrote to me and he said, Ida, I heard you were doing this show. I would have written to you sooner, but I got involved with the production of Fiddler on the Roof and now the revival of She Loves Me. And I'm reading this letter thinking, you're excused, Sheldon.
Right,
First of all, I
right.
didn't expect to hear from him.
Of course not.
But that's how he is. He has a reputation. I heard some of the folks in The Fiddler were talking about him, some of the singer actors, and they said he was so kind to them and so dear. He wasn't overly critical. He would have notes, but they were delivered in a very kind way, and they always came from the point of view of how to deliver the material better. And they weren't being critical of one's abilities, and he's a special guy.
So you said you're going to do some stuff from She Loves Me. Will it be a little Fiddler?
No, we're not doing Fiddler. We're doing some things from She Loves Me. And again, we're doing a couple of things that are not well known of his, one of which is unpublished also, so that would be kind of fun.
Anything from Tenderloin?
No, actually,
No.
I don't even know much of Tenderloin.
I don't know Tenderloin.
Yeah,
I was
I
just,
don't
as
either.
I'm reading these, I guess that was one of the first big one that he and Jerry Bach did,
They
I
wrote
guess.
quite a few things together.
I
yeah.
guess. Do you know how they met? How they got together?
I don't, because I know that Sheldon came from the Midwest, like the Chicago area, and I don't know where Jerry Bach. I have a feeling Jerry Bach was a New Yorker, but I can't say that for sure.
Right.
No, I don't know how they met. That's interesting. I should find out.
Did your husband Barry work with these gentlemen at all in any of their shows?
No.
Like in the Pit or
No,
whatever?
he
did pit work too, right? Wasn't he?
Well, he was
Not
a
as
member of the New
much,
York
but-
Philharmonic
Okay.
at first,
But
and
he
then
didn't do shows?
when he had a very bizarre sense of humor. He was a member of the New York Philharmonic, and he decided when the studio scene in New York was so big and so busy, he was contracted to do that, and he thought, at the Philharmonic, I'm rehearsing all day, then I have a concert at night. When do I get to practice? And in the studio world, you go in and you do you record the soundtrack for a movie or something, but you get to have a lot of time to yourself. And if you are inclined to practice, you get the time to do that. So he quit the New York Philharmonic, which was a very prestigious position,
Yeah.
and he wrote the administration a sympathy card.
Oh,
Their loss. I loved it. I mean, it
that's
was such a
funny.
black sense of humor. It's so dark.
oh.
And then in his later years, he was a member of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, which was so interesting because there's this whole other level that we're talking about today about how does music enhance the drama.
right.
And that's a very different way of thinking for most instrumentalists.
Right.
Most instrumentalists are not working with words. And that changes
Right,
everything. The
right.
minute the word comes in, everything is changed.
I heard a little bird. Somebody, do you
My
hear that little
phone.
bird? I heard that little birdie.
so have to apologize.
I heard that little bit.
Oh.
The phone sneezing. Oh God!
No, really, what a
I
guess.
told you she was a fiery
What a
Italian
guess.
redhead. I didn't. There was something you mentioned something, and I was going to say.
But he did play one Broadway show, Thoroughly Modern Millie.
Yes,
with
I know-
Sutton
that's
Foster.
why I was
He really
thinking-
liked her. He thought she was a very terrific musician.
Love Sutton Foster.
Yeah, yeah.
I
he
think
had-
she's got a great voice. And
Right.
She's so good. Now, you were talking about how important it is to have a little drama in your background, or acting drama or whatever,
Yeah.
in your background singing. I'm assuming that a lot of the music that you'll be doing on April 10th, there'll be quite a bit of acting there, especially from She Loves Me. If you're going to do Ice Cream,
Right.
that takes a little bit of acting.
Right.
And what you said you're doing Ice Cream?
And we're doing Dear Friend, which is
Oh.
a woman sitting in a club waiting for a blind date.
That's a beautiful song.
It's very touching. It's very touching.
It's
you
so
know.
nice.
And she talks about the setting of the club, the flowers, the table, the linen, and then she goes, and to make it, and as if that wasn't bad enough, a violin starts to
Right,
play.
right,
you know, I
right,
mean,
right.
and she's so nervous. And then we're also doing Tonight at 8,
Oh,
which
okay.
is where she's singing about. Tonight at 8, I'm going to meet one of the smartest men in town, and I'm going to make a fool of myself. Will I spill the wine? Will I be totally silent, or would I babble like an
Yeah,
ape? You know,
right,
it's very real human emotions that
Right,
people
right, right.
experience.
Would that be a medley? Those three songs?
Those,
They're all
yeah,
together?
we're going to do a
Okay.
medley like
Oh,
that.
great, great,
and
great.
we're doing that with some of the Dorothy Fields things too, medleys. Yeah, it's kind of it's nice because you don't want to have too much of stop and go, stop
Right,
and go.
right, right.
Yeah, so medleys are.
I didn't
cool.
realize this woman that she was responsible for
She
the
wrote
lyrics
so
for
much.
so many of these
Yeah.
beautiful songs
Right.
that, as I've gotten older, I appreciate more and more all the time.
You'll have to ask David Lam when you meet him, her son. I believe he has his mother's Oscars. 4.
4 Oscars.
4 Oscars.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
nice to have 4 Oscars. Oh
Yeah.
God, I wish he'd bring it with. I'd love to see a real Oscar.
Yeah,
Touch
right.
it and hold it.
Oh, wouldn't that be funny?
and
I doubt that he'd do that.
Did you
but-
say at one point you might include that letter from Sheldon in the program?
Yeah, I think so. I think I
good.
should.
That'd be nice. I think
because it's
people-
very sweet from him, and it's nice. It's very nice for people to see what he's like, because that letter. I mean, I'll just include a paragraph, but it really tells you a lot about him. It tells you somebody of his stature who's so busy and at his advanced age is going to take the time to write to a colleague with whom he performed several years ago and say, I understand, that tells you a lot. That's a real mensch,
Right, right.
to use the
right.
Yiddish word.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. Again, this concert is going to be on April 10th at 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock in the
at
afternoon at
Oldcastle
Oldcastle Theater.
And I'm sure it's going to be a really fun concert.
And there's it's just great music. In addition, there's piano, voice, bass, and then my good friend Bruce Williamson, who will be playing B-flat clarinet, bass clarinet, alto saxophone, tenor saxophone, and flute. And I told him if he ever starts to sing, that's the end of our friendship.
But
I mean,
that name is so familiar to
well,
me.
he
What,
was
is there
here
something
last
else?
year on the concert we
okay.
did last year. Lincoln and I and Bruce
Right.
and Ashley Horn, the violinist, and he also is teaching at Bennington College. Maybe
Oh.
you know his name from that.
I know the name from
He's
someplace.
and he's also in the Pit Orchestra of Chicago. So he comes up to Bennington, teaches his students for how many days, drives back to New York, and goes and plays, I think, 6 performances of Chicago.
God.
And in between rehearses with
Right,
us.
right. And going back to Barry, up at her husband Barry, up at Bennington, at Southern Vermont College, in the gallery, whatever they
Yeah,
called it.
the beautiful room.
Barry and there was a pianist. They did music from Schindler's List
Right, right.
that day. Now, was Barry involved in that movie in playing?
Oh, I don't know. I
No, you
don't
don't
know
know.
if he recorded that. to tell
because
you
he
the truth.
did do some.
Yeah.
Did he do some work with movies too?
Oh
or
yeah,
not?
he did a lot of
did
film,
right?
a lot of film
Okay.
scores, and did
That's what I
solos, as did Jesse Levy, our cellist that was here just for this concert. Jesse is actually in a film, a Woody Allen movie, where you see
Small
him.
Time Crooks.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, which I haven't seen.
And Dale Stuckenbrook, the violinist who was here also for this March concert, he's done loads of Broadway shows, loads of recordings, loads of film recordings. It's a nice way to remain a freelance person and control your time. And yet still make a living doing that, but you get to savor your free time for what they love most, which is, you know, Mozart and Beethoven and those guys.
I mentioned to Ida earlier that the musicians, I'm watching all of them yesterday, and you know, the arms are going and everything is moving, but hardly any expression on their faces.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Which I'm thinking, God,
It's all
if
internal.
something really dramatic going on, it seems like it's going, oh.
Yeah.
But I can still see Dale Stuckenbrook.
Yeah,
I can still see him going at that first piece.
Oh, great.
Oh my God!
You
I
know-
thought if he had longer hair, that hair would have been
Yeah,
swaying
yeah.
like it was in the wind.
Yeah,
Ah.
and he's done so many interesting things. When he started teaching, he teaches at a Waldorf school in Long Island. He also teaches at Long Island University. But when he started teaching these younger kids at the Waldorf school, they were not interested in classical music. It's like when I started teaching at that convent school, they weren't interested.
Right.
And so what he has done, and now it's developed further, he started a vegetable orchestra where they would take instruments like a gourd and they would scoop out the gourd and then they would put strings on it and bow it, and it became a big deal. And there were the kids who liked to play them, and then there were the kids who liked to make them. They didn't like to play music, but they got intrigued with the making of the instrument. That's ingenious to me.
I swear to God, I've seen something.
You may
on that.
have. It's become quite a phenomenon. They did a residency at Columbia University.
Oh, that's funny.
It's just terrific. And then he plays the saw. You know, he came to Bennington about a year and a half ago and did a solo recital here. And he played the violin, as you have witnessed, expertly.
Oh.
But then he takes a $25 saw out of your local hardware store and takes one of his really fine, fancy violin bows and plays the saw with the bow. And there's a wonderful musician by the name of Bill Hayes. He's the percussionist for Liza Minnelli. And so he plays
just
vibes.
turned 70.
Right. And Bill just sent me on Facebook a photograph of him and Liza
There's going to be
celebrating.
a celebration of her life in May.
Oh,
in
really?
New York.
Oh,
May
good.
13th, I think, or something.
Well, what Bill did is he plays vibes. And the three of us were on tour together, and he arranged a Kurt Weill song called My Ship. And he arranged it for 3 vibrating instruments: the human voice, which vibrates, as you observed yesterday,
Yes.
the vibraphones, and the saw. The saw has lots of vibrato, and the sound was wild. It was just wild, confluence of all these sounds. It was just terrific, and all these different vibratos.
Well,
So
on your radio show, Monday Morning Music, didn't you you had a
I
man
did
come on
ha-
that plays the song?
yes, right,
Right.
yeah.
A local, right? Isn't he-
Well, I think I had him I had Bill on the phone,
Oh,
and
it's
then
on
played
the
a
phone?
recording of his.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I
Yeah.
thought it was
Yeah.
okay. All right. No, that's really interesting. Now, yesterday also I noticed when Dale was playing, and I don't know if it's because everything got so, but he had to keep pulling the hairs or
Really? Off the front, the
he'd
bow hair?
swing 'em out. And every once in a while when they'd be hanging, I think, don't fall that way or it's going to get in the way. I don't know. I thought, boy, he's really
You know
putting
what's
that,
fun?
he's really putting that to
It's
work.
fun when you see a violinist at work and a string will pop. I mean, it's not funny for them,
no,
you know.
no, and the
And
guitars, too.
most of them will stop
Oh, really?
and then replace the string, because it's hard enough to create all those notes on just 4 strings.
Right.
And somebody said to me at the theater yesterday at Oldcastle, my minimum is 6. He plays a 6-string guitar, and he said that's the least I can function with. But I've seen some violinists have popped a string and then they continue the piece with just the remaining 3 strings, which means on the spot they are reconfiguring all their figuring,
Right.
and they're having to on the spot rework the whole piece.
Right.
That's violinists tend to be really smart people.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how do you protect your instrument? What do you do
Well-
to keep your instrument in shape?
No, I try to live healthy like anyone else would. And anyone else who's concerned about their physical well-being, because remember, it's our body for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately.
recently, I started experiencing a lot of acid reflux. And I really got disturbed by it. I was
I understand
constantly,
it's really uncomfortable.
oh, so uncomfortable, and I'd be coughing all the time. And one time, and it's about a year and a half ago, I was coughing so violently that I burst a blood vessel in my left vocal cord. And it was shortly before coming here to do a concert at Oldcastle. And I found the most wonderful throat doctor. He's been on 60 Minutes. He's very highly thought of. And he said to me, no, you have to give up red wine, coffee, and tomatoes. And I looked at him and I said, have you even seen my last name?
Yeah.
I mean, you refer to the fact
Yeah,
that I'm
I'm
of
thinking,
Italian origin.
yeah.
Red wine, coffee, and tomatoes. But it really did make a difference.
Huh.
It really made a difference by cutting back the amount of acid reflux that was the amount of acid that those things were creating.
I don't. Well, I do drink more coffee. I never used to be a coffee drinker, but red wine I don't drink, and I really don't eat a lot of tomatoes. I don't
Well,
know.
those three things were staples.
Huh.
And then, you know, the other thing that sort of have come to later in life is meditation. And, you know, it's very hard when you're a performer to calm down.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
I have found that to be extremely helpful. And that if I can calm my mind, then I can be a more focused performer. You know, I'm not thinking about so many different things at one time,
Right.
which is what tends to happen.
Do you vocalize every day?
If
Try
not
to.
every day, I'd say 5 days a week. Yeah, and on purpose, some days I'll take a break.
Yeah, you know, someplace, I guess it's probably on Facebook, you know, I'm not as much a Luddite as I used to be. You knew
Good.
I was,
Yeah.
you know, with my smartphone now, I'm starting to learn. But evidently there is this movie, a documentary about Marge Champion
Oh,
and this other older man. They're both 90, I believe now. Every day in New York City, they go to some studio and they are at the bar doing their exercises.
Oh,
their
that bar.
Yeah, the
Not the red wine- not the red wine bar. Yeah, okay.
BARRE. And there they
Yeah,
are
good for them.
stretching
Yeah,
and
at
doing
that
everything
age,
at
wow.
90 years
wow,
old.
that's fabulous.
Oh God, I guess
Yeah.
she still lives somewhere near in Springfield.
Well, I
or
don't do
Massachusetts,
that
not
much.
too
I
far
don't do
away,
that
but-
much of physical stuff, but
Right.
I do vocalize. You know, I'm pretty good about keeping my instrument in shape. Otherwise, I wouldn't be singing.
Right.
I mean, you know, just like your car has to get a lube job every so often, so do your vocal cords.
Yeah. Well, so we've had a telephone, we've had a bird sneezing, and acid reflux.
All right.
We
Isn't
got
this
all
an
of
interesting
this.
show?
We got all of this in here too. It's part of the idea. We're taping this live. It won't be live when it's on the air. Who were your idols when you were growing up? Because I mean, opera, yes, but I think you have a lot of other people that you must
I had
have.
two singers that, and in my apartment in New York, they're right on the wall, photos of them by the piano, that actually I began to idolize as a teenager. One may not be a surprise to you, Maria Callas.
Okay.
And the reason I so adored her singing was she was an incredible, I don't want to say actress, I mean, she just so delivered the word. And the other one is Billie Holiday, for the same reasons. Billie Holiday told you a story, you got it. I was so in love with her singing that when I got out of music school and moved to New York, the first thing I did, one of the first things I did, I had learned that Billie Holiday had been in a hospital, a public facility, on what was then called, what was it called? It then became Roosevelt Island, where there's fancy housing now.
Yeah.
But it was an island where, you know, they had the public hospitals, and she was incarcerated in that hospital. She was handcuffed to the bed. And I just felt I needed to visit the place, and so I went and did a concert there. And I actually met a nurse who had been there when she was a patient there and was able to tell me some of her stories about how sweet she was and how kind she was. So
She
those
wanted
two women.
children so
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
HBO right now, they're showing Lady Day at the
Oh,
Emerson
right,
Bar and
with
Grill.
the great Audrey McDonald. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I'm looking forward to
I mean,
seeing
just
that.
listening. I didn't see the show before. I
neither.
just watched it Saturday
It
night
just
or
started
whatever.
this past night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the music I've been listening to and I loved it. But then I watched it the other night, crying.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
that
yeah.
woman.
She had a terrible
Had a
life from very
terrible
early
life.
years.
Terrible
You know,
life.
here I was just talking to you about how my mother was so supportive of my singing, but she didn't have any of that kind of support.
no.
She had a horrible childhood.
The Duchess.
Yeah.
Her mother was the Duchess.
Yeah.
But she talks about how she wanted children. It might have changed her life if she'd had children. And there's
Oh,
another
she
lady,
had
Audrey McDonald.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And she
God.
went to Juilliard, you know, she's classically
yeah.
trained, which shows up in that she's able to sing night after night after night.
And 6 Tonys.
Yeah, yeah.
6
It was amazing.
Tonys.
Yeah. And now
Oy.
she's going to be, she's really something. But that show, but Billie Holiday and Maria Callas, they were very similar to me in many ways. They both led these kind of tortured lives. I mean, Maria Callas, you know, gave up singing because of Onassis.
Oh, yeah, right.
He told her, that's what I understand, that she had to stop performing. And one of the greatest singing actresses we have ever had, and she gave up performing because this man told her to. And then the story is that she may have committed suicide at the end, because she, you know, passed she passed relatively young. I think she was only in her 50s. I'd have to check that. I mean, I'm just saying that off the top of my head. But the two of them I admired so much because they had this ability to convey a story through musical means.
No, the show Masterclass, is that about
That was
Maria
about her,
Callas,
yeah.
right?
Now, I did see that years ago on Broadway. That was
Okay.
wonderful,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I don't know.
And I was in one of her master classes at Juilliard.
Wow.
And that was, it was terrific because this one singer got up, and Callas was like so disciplined. And this singer got up, and she was clearly not very disciplined, and you know, she was constantly checking her hair in the mirror, and Callas would have no part of that. And she said, "You sing like a housefrau," which was just awful, you know. But she was a remarkable artist, absolutely remarkable, and so was Billie Holiday for the same reasons.
Right.
I loved both of them.
Yeah,
Still do.
Strange Fruit. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
And I read the book not too long
I
ago.
remember
too.
that, yeah.
But she did. She had such a voice. And Audrey McDonald, I thought, how is she going to? I don't know.
And
Audrey
she did a
McDonald, what
great
she does with
job
her
of
voice.
imitating Billie's voice, yeah.
I don't know
You know,
how she
years ago there was another show called Lady Day Sings the Blues.
Okay.
And
oh,
it was
Diana
also-
Ross
That's
did the
right.
movie.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And I remember seeing the film. I don't think I saw the show,
Yeah.
but also about Billie Holiday's life. Yeah.
Well, I'm sad that we got to stop now. We're getting
Well, but it was
at
fun.
the end of our
We've
hour.
talked about a lot of
did-
unusual things.
I know it. You didn't say what most people say. We're going to talk for an hour.
Oh,
You didn't say
God.
that. It goes very, very fast. But I just want to remind people on April 10th at Oldcastle, April 10th at 3 o'clock. Pick yourself up. And this woman will certainly pick you up as far as music goes, along with her 3 musician friends. And I just cannot thank Ida Faiella enough
fun
for
for
being
me.
here. And it's just really fun. I really felt like today we were just having a conversation.
All
which
we needed was some red wine on the table.
That's right. Not you, not you. But I'm just, this is what I want my show to be, a conversation,
well,
not
that's what
an
it is.
interview.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank
you,
you so
Willy.
much.
Thank
and
you.
we shall see you on April 10th with bells on.
Okay, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. 3 o'clock, April 10th, Oldcastle. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, your friends and neighbors, and we shall see you next time with another great guest.
This time of day, everything's okay. I take a long look around, I have to say, this time of year, it becomes